Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is Stephen Flynn being caught telling porcupines again. Right? This guy's redefining the Oxford Dictionary definition of telling lies. Right? He's just right gone, off and one since the election got called. He was never the best at being honest and truthful, but since the election got called, he seems to have went into overdrive. And I think it's very, very clear to understand why. As of last Thursday, I think it was, Westminster Parliament was cancelled, dissolved, put in the bin, because we'll get new MPs after the election. So he's no longer an MP, and obviously he needs to have a job. So I think he's quite worried about him not getting back to Westminster after the 4th of July when the election takes place. So he's went total batshit crazy, right? I don't have any problems saying that, because some of the stuff coming out of his mouth is just bonkers. It defies logic, it defies common sense. And if anybody wants to vote for that, then crack on, fill your boots, keep him in a job. The man's mental. Right, so a lot of newspapers been covering this, and I think particularly the funniest one is the Express. Their coverage is quite funny. So their headline is Stephen Flynn's resorts to outright lies as SNP's general election campaign plunges to a new low. The story goes, the SNP have been accused of resorting to outright lies in a desperate bid to turn around their failing general election campaign. The party's Westminster boss, Stephen Flynn, has caused outrage after claiming the Tories and Labour will privatise the NHS after the 4th July vote. It has led to criticism from Scottish Conservatives and Scottish Labour, who point out that health is a devolved power. And the SNP has also used the private sector in health service. Writing in the Daily Record, Mr Flynn aimed most of his attack at Labour, claiming huge privatisation of the NHS was Sir Keith Stammer's plan. He pointed to comments by Wes Streeting that wanted the NHS to form partnerships with private sector that goes beyond just hospitals. The official SNP X account had previously been subject to a humiliating community note. Community note, for those who don't use Twitter, is when you put up something that's shit, right? And people can point out that what you've said is not really true or accurate. So when you get a community note on your post, it's a wee bit embarrassing for people. And the SNP have now had one, right? After they claimed Labour wanted to privatise the NHS. But it did not stop Mr Flynn saying only a vote for the Nats could help keep the NHS in public hands. Right, how does that work, Mr Flynn? If only a vote for the Nationalists will help. Now, let's just say you were right. Let's just say the nuclear theory was correct and that both Labour and Tories were just going to privatise the NHS. Let's just consider that as truth for a minute, although it's total bollocks, right? But let's just say that's what's going to happen. You're saying only a vote for the Nationalists could stop that from happening. Scotland's got 57 seats and Westminster out of 600 odd, right? So if you won every seat and somebody else won the rest, they'll decide, no you. So that's point one, right? So what you're saying about only a vote for SNP will stop the NHS being privatised is total bollocks, right? It will make no difference whatsoever if it was true, which it's not, that the intentions of both Labour and Tory was to privatise the NHS. The other thing that you completely forgot is, and what, right? If you're only interested in Scotland, you have to remember that health is a devolved power. So it actually wouldn't matter, because you don't care about England. You've told us this, the rest of the UK is no your concern. Scotland's your concern, am I right? That's what you keep telling us. So it wouldn't actually matter if your nuclear theory, which is bollocks, came true, that Westminster privatised the NHS, because we couldn't privatise the NHS in Scotland because it's a devolved power. So all you're doing is you're throwing fear out there to try and convince people not to vote for either of those two parties and keep you in a job, right? And anybody that can't see through that doesn't want to see through it. That's the truth, okay? So Scottish Labour Deputy Jackie Baillie MSP said the use of the private sector in the NHS is actually increased under the SNP in Scotland, right? And that she's reminded them that her health is 100% devolved. She added Stephen Flynn is doing the Tories' work for them as he fabricates outright lies and attacks Labour. Labour will always defend the NHS. And to be fair, that's kind of something that you just put hand in hand, you know, Labour Party, NHS, trade unions and all these things. That's what makes the Labour Party the Labour Party. So it's just bollocks, right? And Scottish Conservative Deputy Leader Megan Gallagher called the story complete nonsense. She added the NHS is fully devolved and it's because of SNP negligence that patients are having to go private. And there have been stories in the past. The NHS in Scotland are actually putting people into private care system. Not in everything, not in a massive amount, but they do. They send some people, refer them private. So, and this has been happening for a long, long time, to be honest with you. Mr. Streeting, UK Labour's health spokesman, had written to the Telegraph that the party was open to private sector playing a part in NHS. That's completely different from we're privatising the NHS. SNP MSP Michelle Thompson had previously hinted that Scots may need to pay for certain procedures while doctors say the current NHS is unsustainable. Right? So now, not only sending some patients to the private sector to get whatever it is they need, the SNP have already declared that they might start charging people. The SNP, the biggest, and I've said this a million times, right? The biggest problem the SNP have caused for our NHS in Scotland is giving away free prescriptions to everybody. They didn't invent the free prescription idea. The notion of free prescriptions has been about for as long as my living memory. What the SNP did is they decided to give the free prescription to everybody. So unless you had life-threatening condition where you needed that to stay alive and you got them free, or you couldn't afford them and you got them free, they decided to scrap people like me who could afford the £9 charge for a prescription. They took that, so I can't pay. It's impossible for me to pay for my prescription. That's cost our NHS up here billions of pounds. That's factual. So the easiest way to fix our NHS in Scotland is make the prescription process the exact same as the rest of the UK. But the SNP hold this up as some fantastic thing that they should all be sainted because of, right? When in reality, it's helped bugger the health service up here. And accountants within the health service were raising that question before it even went live. They can work calculators. They can apply simple mathematics and arithmetic and stuff like that. And you go, well, we're going to need to pay for all these. So this is the SNP's doing. The budget problems that we have. There could be hundreds of millions of pounds more per year probably in the budget for NHS, for health, if they just bin this stupid thing, right? But they couldn't do that either because that'd be political suicide. Imagine saying for all these years, this is fantastic, best thing ever happened to Scotland, but we're going to cancel it now because we realise it's bankrupting the NHS. So, but that's the harsh reality of the matter. Despite that, Mr. Flynn said the SNP would introduce law in Westminster that would keep the NHS safely in public hands. All right, that's like pushing a law saying we'll keep the police in the police hands, right? It's like you don't have a national health service if it's private. It's contradictory terms, and do what you like, right? You're just barking mad. And bind the hands of the UK government, ensuring that our health service is fully protected as a publicly owned, publicly operated, and with its services publicly commissioned. Well, nobody's suggesting otherwise. So you're actually wanting a law. It's like the hate law, isn't it? You're putting a law in place that actually doesn't mean anything, change anything from the day before. But it's a headline thing for you, and it might convince the odd crackpot to, vote for. And it's not even vote for SNP anymore. It's Stephen Flynn when you vote for him, right? Because he obviously gets information about polls, etc. for his constituency. And it's in a shaky peg. So he's just thrown anything out there to try and protect his stance. Ironically, the use of private sector has exploded under the SNP in Scotland. In 2022, 40% of all hip and knee operations in Scotland took place in the independent sector, with 1,745 rounds of chemotherapy also paid for privately, while health boards have spent tens of millions of pounds sending patients for private treatment over the past few years. So it's all right for the SNP to do that, but it's not all right for the Labour Party to suggest that they might look at partnerships with private sector to help deliver a better level of service. So the SNP have done it in Scotland for some time. When anybody else suggests that they look at stuff like that, it's suddenly not acceptable. I mean, this nonsense, this tactic can be, it's been repeated in so many different questions. And people, every day more and more people are seeing right through you. And it's mad. I actually seen a guy on Twitter last night claiming, right, and this is how bonkers the cult are, right, claiming that the £600,000 isn't missing out the SNP accounts. There is no missing money. Well, for 3 years now, there's been a branch firm investigation trying to find it. See if the money was there. They would go, there it's there on the accounts, right? It's not there, which is why the investigation's 3 years old. 3 people were arrested a year ago because of this missing money. And I'm quite happy to suggest that their lawyers are probably not stupid, right? And if the money was in the account, they would have been out of jail at a police station 30 seconds after arriving. And if certainly there's a report being sent to the Procurator Fiscal with charges for one of the 3 just now. Now, I'm kind of thinking they had legal representation, and the twice now that man's been arrested, defence would have been, there's the money. So, but we've got people who actually inhabit and get a vote, right, who are actually saying publicly that there's no evidence that £600,000 is missing. That's not even up for debate. But these people who must defend the SNP at all costs because they actually believe their bullshit, that somehow they're going to create independence when they actually don't even have a route to a referendum on the table now that's A, practical or B, workable, right? They're totally bonkers. They're totally oblivious to all this. And they will buy any shite the SNP want to serve them up. And they'll then, and I predicted this yesterday, they'll then start putting out their version of reality. And we're seeing the exact same thing. The story broke yesterday about the £450 million that's currently been returned to the EU. Now, one of the biggest crackpots in the SNP is that boy Alan, what's his name? He looks like Craig White, right? And he sounds like Craig White, and he talks as much shite as Craig White. So I'm sort of don't like him for a lot of reasons. And he put a wee tweet together saying that this story about the £450 million missing was just nonsense. And they've started regurgitating his nonsense. There's nothing to see here. These people are bonkers, right? And that's all that they've got left. They're absolute most bonker cult members. Because anybody that still fancies an independent Scotland, which is allowed, that's an opinion people are allowed to have. But 10 years ago, the only thing they would do is vote SNP. But even they're realising that these people are buggered up the dreams of independence for nationalists, and they're leaving, not leaving the party, they've already done that, but, not going to vote for them going forward because they're batshit crazy, right? So there we go. More absolute bollocks by Stephen Flynn, more lies just trying to save his job so that he's get wages next month. And if you fall for it, nobody's going to convince you otherwise. If you actually believe the nonsense that's coming out of the SNP just now, then he'll slap it into you. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing. But most important of all, unless you're Stephen Flynn, the SNP, or any other batshit crazy cult members that they've still got, see everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.